Hello, freedom fighter, and welcome to this training. My name's Helen Bennett. I'm a bulimia freedom coach, and I help incredible people all over the world end binging and or purging for good. Now, I know the webinar is called How to Beat Bulimia, but if that doesn't resonate with you, if you don't think of yourself as bulimic, that's okay. I know the information is going to be pertinent to you. If you're feeling out of control around food, if you're feeling at war with your body, then you've come to the right place. It's going to be a long training. Grab a pen and paper. I really encourage you to set aside distractions because I want to give you as much as I can today. And I'll do my best to keep it short, which if anybody knows me, it's not easy. I tend to waffle. But you know, time is our most precious and valuable resource. We don't get any more of it. And most importantly, I want to get to the point so that you can have as much bulimia free or binge purge out of control food craziness freedom. I want you to be free of that for as long as possible from this day forward. And I want you to enjoy all the time that you have left without this insanity in your life. Now, I just want to tell you up front, I struggled with bulimia for 20 years, 2 decades of my life. It's half of my life. And, you know, it was acute. And I don't mean like, oh, cute. I mean, it was bad. I was binging and or purging through vomiting or over exercising up to three to 7 times a day, just on average. And it's still hard for me to say that, even though right now I specialize in helping people overcome it and I've recovered. I still find it hard and shameful to speak about it. And so I just want to honor that. And I want to honor that you're carrying probably the same shame and confusion and frustration as I did. And in my experience, the people that I work with, they're not weak, they're not undisciplined, they're not useless, they're not lacking in willpower. In fact, the people that I work with tend to be very driven, very hardworking, well-adjusted. On the outside, they look like they've got it all together. And maybe you feel just like that. Everybody sees you from the outside looking like you got your stuff together, but actually behind the scenes, you've got this horrific relationship with food that feels completely out of control. And maybe even a really horrific relationship with your mirror, where you just hate the way you look and you feel like you're constantly trying to get your body to do something it doesn't want to do, and it's working against you. Now, today's webinar, I want to unpick all of that. I want to give you a ton of tools that you can start using immediately. And full disclosure, right at the end of this webinar, if you've listened to all of it and if you think, oh my God, the information she's given me makes so much sense, I want to execute on that immediately. I will then I will invite you to jump on a call with me. That's the last I'm going to say about that. I'm going to leave it right till the end of the webinar. And obviously, if you don't want to, you don't have to, but I wanted to be upfront with you about that, because one thing I've learned about coaching is we got to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And a lot of you are probably bracing yourself for the sale at the end of the webinar. Well, it's coming, but it is entirely, if you resonate with it, if you're ready to do the work, then you will take action if you choose to jump on a call with me. I don't beat around the bush. We have to get real, raw, and honest when we're talking about something like bulimia. And as I've just said, it can be hard to talk about it. But I promise you today, I'm going to be as honest, open, upfront, real, raw with you as I can be, because you need to know the truth. You need to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. You're going to get it all today. So what we're going to talk about is exactly the system that I use to help all of my clients. And it was really very much the system that I used to break free of bulimia. Even though I've refined it and tweaked it and improved it since then, the basics of it are really the same. And I just want to say, a lot of people reach out to me when they've been through therapy, as I had, when they've done inpatient or outpatient treatment, and it hasn't worked. And there's nothing wrong with therapy or inpatient treatment. In fact, it's highly beneficial for a lot of people. And I think therapy for me was wonderful. However, it didn't stop me from throwing up my food. It didn't stop me from binging. It was good to go back. It was good to do all that healing. It was wonderful. I have no regrets of the therapy I've done. But I did find that for me personally, it had almost negligible impact. I don't think I had a day where I wasn't binging or purging when I was in therapy. So if you've come from that experience If you've come from that and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to, if therapy can't help me, if inpatient treatment can't help me, how am I ever going to get better? And you've come here looking for solutions, I really want to provide those to you. And more than that, I'm going to give you a sense of hope that it's okay. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you just have the wrong strategy, the wrong plan. And perhaps my lived experience combined with my coaching is the solution that you need. I'm very, very practical. It's going to be very skills-based. It's going to be very action-based. And while I think therapy is a wonderful add-on to coaching, for some people, it's not enough. And if you feel like you're one of them, I want to give you a little hope that it's okay. If you're feeling silly or confused or broken or worse, hopeless, and feeling like you're never going to break out of this, I'm here to tell you that you can and you will. And many people come to me with that story. Now, you don't have to have been through therapy or inpatient treatment. This might be the first time you've ever reached out for help, in which case I'm thrilled to have you here. I do need to say a quick disclaimer though. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a registered psychiatrist or a registered psychologist. And what you're going to hear today is really entirely from my lived experience breaking free of bulimia, plus the experiences I have working with people all over the world and all my clients in doing the same. I'm not attached to being right. If there's a better way, I'm going to know about it. But from what I can tell right now, there's no magic pill. And I'm not attached to being right, but I am attached to being effective and to trying to help people as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. So on that note, if you even have a whisper of a thought that you could do with reaching out to a medical professional, particularly a doctor, a dentist, or a therapist, and it's in the back of your mind that something's wrong and you need to reach out, I'm going to encourage you to do that. And in fact, even if you don't have that whisper, book a doctor's appointment, get a checkup, book a dentist appointment, okay? So I wanted to say that up front, and without further ado, let's dive in to what you came here for, which is the strategy, the tools, the skills, the drills that you're going to need to break free of bulimia for good. All right, first thing I'm going to do is just outline exactly what we're going to cover in the next hour or so. In the first part of the webinar, we'll explore the 3 confronting mindset shifts that you'll need to make if you want swift and long-lasting recovery from binging or purging. You'll discover the mechanism that got you trapped in bulimia and why that exact same mechanism is the mechanism that will set you free. I'm going to get real, raw, and honest about what you're up against, and I'm going to get clear about what to expect on your recovery journey. In the second part of the webinar, we're going to get clear on what work you need to do. So this is the action piece. It's always mindset first, action second. Most importantly, I'm going to give you a ritual, a very specific, simple ritual that you can use to intercept those nasty binge urges as soon as they hit. And we'll talk about the 4 areas of binge or purge urge prevention. These are the 4 areas of your life that you can begin to work on day by day, improving, working to master in order to break free, and not just break free, but actually really solidify those results, make them stick. We don't need you relapsing in 3 years' time. This is where the real work of recovery happens. We're also going to talk about the dreaded fear of weight gain. It's certainly the biggest fear that most of my clients face as they take on recovery. And I'm going to tackle that openly and honestly with you today. And lastly, we're going to look at the 2 biggest reasons people fail to recover long-term and the key to ensuring that you are not one of them, that you are one of the people who succeed. Great, now you know what's coming. First up, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Do any of these sound like you? Are you tired of waking up every morning and promising yourself that today is the day, it's going to be different, no more, never again, only to find yourself binging or purging a few hours later? Do you feel like you're in a constant battle with your body? Are you convinced that if you stop purging, your weight will balloon out of control and before long, you'll be the size of a house? Do you wake up at night worrying about the damage that you're doing to your body and your health, not to mention your bank account and your relationships? Are you embarrassed and ashamed to tell your loved ones that you're still not better after all this time, and maybe you've just decided to lie to them instead? Are you exhausted by all the struggle? And are you losing hope, perhaps, that freedom from bulimia is even actually possible at all? If you answered yes to some of those questions, I want to let you know that that is exactly how I felt. 20 years of struggle and nothing seemed to be working. I want you to know that there's hope, and more than that, to my mind, most importantly, there's certainty if you choose it. You see, you are entirely capable of recovery. And in my experience, anyone who wants to recover can, just as I did. And as you do, your self-confidence will skyrocket, your pride will blossom, and you'll be empowered with the time and the focus and the energy to create the life that deep down you feel that you're capable of having and you've dreamed about it. It feels so close, and yet frustratingly, you seem to trip yourself up again and again and again. When you're free of bulimia, you can create that life day by day, bit by bit, at the highest level that you choose. That's what's waiting for you on the other side. It's not perfect. Life on the other side of bulimia is not perfect. You'll have, quote unquote, better quality problems, for sure. I'll never forget when my client Katie phoned me up out of the blue, not because she'd relapsed, but because she had a boyfriend now, and she wanted me to give her some relationship coaching. And just recently, my client Aoife, who we touch base once in a while, she's doing really well. And she WhatsApped me and she said she was struggling. And I thought, get on a call straight away. And she said, no, there's no need. She's not binging or purging. She's just exhausted because she's so busy preparing for her first ever bodybuilding championship, which she went on to win. And 18 months before, she'd been suicidally depressed and was binging and purging 3 or 4 times a day. This is the transformation that can happen. This is how your life can turn around. The only thing that differentiates those who make it to that place of freedom with all of those better quality problems from those who don't, it's not their ability. It's not because they're weak or useless or undisciplined. Quite the opposite. Just like I said, bulimics are some of the strongest, most capable, hardworking, funny, intelligent people I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And I bet that you are no exception, even if you don't believe it right now. But the thing that separates those who do from those who don't, it's the mindset. Mindset will trip people up and keep them stuck every time. A mindset that keeps them from taking the next right step. A mindset that keeps them from taking new and effective action. A mindset that keeps them stuck in failure and fear and worst, despair or hopelessness. So before we tackle the action section, we must tackle the mindset. And I'm going to challenge you today with 3 mindset shifts that I'd like you to take on board. Mindset shift number 1, it's not self-sabotage. I hear people a lot, why am I sabotaging myself? Why am I sabotaging myself? It's like adding insult to injury. So this is my take on it. I'm going to challenge you with this idea. Bulimia isn't self-sabotage. In fact, in a weird way, it's more of a self-protection or self-preservation. I know from experience, myself when working with people all over the world, that you're not deliberately trying to ruin your life. Instead, you're actively giving yourself something you want and you need. It was only really when I started to look at what was good, what were the benefits of bulimia, that I was able to truly prepare myself for what I'd be up against in recovery and what I would need to do and what I would need to let go of and what needs needed to be met. That if I didn't have bulimia there, if I couldn't binge and purge, how was I going to get those needs met? So take a moment right now, if you have a pen and paper, or if you don't, grab one, and brainstorm all of the things about bulimia that are good, all of the ways in which it serves you. Let's just get open and honest and real. We're very quick to talk about the stuff that's bad about bulimia and try and scare ourselves into recovery. But actually, the way to recovery is to deeply look at what is good about it. So write down everything that comes to mind. Now, everybody's going to have their own unique list. We're not all the same, but everybody has benefits. And let me help you with a few examples. So perhaps you find that binging and purging helps you feel calm when you're anxious. Maybe it's a way of blowing off steam after an argument. Maybe it's a way of releasing anger that you've been holding back when you're angry with somebody, but you can't shout to them. And then that binge and purge later is just this huge release of that anger. Maybe bulimia is a way of giving yourself pleasure at the end of a busy day when you've done nothing but serve other people and help other people and tick off to-do lists. Oh, and at the end of the day, it's like this one place where you just let go, relax, do something for you, be a bit crazy and wild? Do you feel enjoyment when you're doing it? Do you feel relieved? Is it an escape? Do you feel numb? Do you feel rebellious? Do you feel in control for a second? And let's be honest, is it the most effective way that you know of just eating what you really want to eat, but without the consequences of weight gain? The fact is that bulimia isn't all bad. There's some very powerful forces at work that are keeping you where you are. And recovery is going to require that you look at those forces, you see it for what it is, and then you find ways of meeting those needs that bulimia is currently meeting without binging and purging, because those needs are going to need to be met. It's not an overnight job, that's for sure. But if you do this work that I'm going to be chatting about today, and it's done thoroughly, and you're willing to face your fears and face the needs that it's meeting and face everything that you're up against, and then you diligently and consistently put in the work, then you will begin to enjoy the fruits of lasting freedom from the disorder. And in the interim, I want you to let go of this story that you're carrying, that it's self-sabotage. You're actually giving yourself something that you need. It feels good, it solves problems, it helps you cope, it keeps you safe. So there's nothing wrong with you for giving yourself something that you need. You're just not skilled at giving yourself what you need without using binging or purging to do it. Yet. There's a big fat yet at the end of that sentence. You will become skilled. And this is the beginning of that journey. Mindset shift number 2. There's nothing wrong with you. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's not what's wrong with you that's keeping you stuck. It's actually what's right with you. And in order to explain that, let's just do a quick lesson in neuroplasticity, which neuroplasticity is the mechanism by which our brain learns new skills, new behaviors, and eliminates and lets go of old ones. And we're going to use the best illustration I can think of, which is how this all started. Let's look at how this began, how the behaviors of binging and purging became embedded into your nervous system, because that's going to give us a clue on how to get out. So let's go back in time, because bulimia in most cases is preceded by restriction, dietary food restriction. And I bet that once upon a time, for any number of reasons, you wanted to lose weight. And when you began restricting, your brain created a survival instinct, an urge to eat in order to prevent you from starving it. Now, this is a simplistic description, but bear with me just for illustration. For most people, not all, but most, bulimia began when they were relatively young. Mostly, the research is showing most of bulimia begins in the teens. Certainly for me, I was 16. And that's when our brains and our bodies are still developing. And they must have nourishment and nutrition. They're still growing. So it's imperative that we eat. So as you began dieting and restricting your food intake, your brain would send you an urge to eat, quite understandably. And eventually you'd give in to that urge, even though you were quite sure in your mind that you wanted to diet and you wanted to restrict that food, but you were getting these intense desires, these very physiological drives to eat, and you'd eat. And your brain was happy. Your body was getting the nourishment it needed, but you had been intending to diet. So you just thought, well, I'm just going to have to double down. I'm going to restrict a bit more. And you did that. And so your brain rebelled and sent you stronger urges to eat. And then you gave in at some point. The problem was, again, you were intent on losing weight. You're intent on dieting and restricting. And that's probably when you discovered purging. Maybe that's when you started vomiting or over-exercising or using laxatives or starving yourself for a period of days. And what happened is it created a kind of vicious cycle, a battle between your body's drive for nourishment and your mind's drive for weight loss. And at this point, I want to mention something called Hebb's law, which is a primary principle in neuroscience and neuroplasticity. And it states that nerve cells that fire together, wire together. And basically that means that any action repeated often enough will become hardwired into your brain, into your nervous system, so that you can do it automatically, so that you can do it without thinking. This mechanism of neuroplasticity is so brilliant. Simple example, tying your shoelaces, brushing your teeth. You do it repeatedly, your brain recognizes, aha, this is a repeated behavior. which means it's got to be important, which means we need to download it, to hardwire it in, put it into your subconscious mind. And that way you can tie your shoelaces and brush your teeth without thinking about it. It's all on autopilot now. So you can see where I'm going with this, because of course, a repeated cycle of restricting and binging and purging again and again and again, hundreds, if not thousands of times. By doing that, you were essentially hardwiring those behaviors into your subconscious brain. Bulimia has become an automatic behavior. And of course, the problem is that when you began the cycle, you didn't know you were hardwiring it in. You certainly didn't know how hard it would be to stop. There's a quote by Samuel Johnson that explains this perfectly. He said, "The chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they're too strong to be broken." And anybody caught up in bulimia will know exactly what he meant. So the good news is there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is designed to hardwire in repeated behaviors. The question, of course, is, well, if there's nothing wrong with you, then how do you stop? I'm going to suggest that you stop the same way that you started. You see, the good news is that your brain is neuroplastic, which means it's able to change. So you're going to stop bulimia by installing or hardwiring a brand new program, an automatic override. And you're going to do that the exact same way that you installed the old one, through repetition, through practice of new behaviors, new skills, new drills. Practice makes permanent. But of course, when you've been doing something a certain way thousands of times, and now you're trying to do it a different way, it takes a lot of conscious effort and a lot of awareness. So for example, I moved to Spain from South Africa. I went from driving on the left-hand side of the road to driving on the right-hand side of the road. It was so hard. My body was screaming at me that I was doing the wrong thing. Every single cell in my body was screaming, "You're on the wrong side of the road." But now, obviously, I've done it many times, and I can get in the car and I can do it without thinking. That's the power of automation. That's the power of repeated behavior and focus and practice over a period of time. It becomes easy and it becomes automatic. At first, it's really hard, then it becomes easy. When it's the easier it gets, the more it's being hardwired into your subconscious brain, just as it should be. And the good news is that the old wiring, the old program, so to speak, does in fact disappear. There's another concept in neuroscience. It's called use it or lose it. If you're not using those old neurons, if you're not using those old pathways and neuromodulators, if they're not being fired up, your brain will actually start to destroy those old nerve cells, which means that freedom, total freedom from bulimia is possible. And the bottom line is that freedom from bulimia will only happen if you practice new behaviors, and it's going to take new thoughts and new emotions and all of it around food in your body. And that's what we're going to learn today. You've got to practice all of it until it becomes automatic. It can feel overwhelming at first. It's like learning a new language. There's so much to learn. But with repeated effort and consistency, you get it. And I know it sounds simple and easy. It isn't. It's really hard. And this is the third mindset shift that I want you to adopt. I want you to prepare mentally for what I call the suck. We spoke earlier about what's good about bulimia, all the rewards that we get from doing it. The bad news is that that reward system isn't just psychological, it's physiological too. And part of hardwiring any new behavior into the nervous system is triggered by the release of dopamine. Now, many people think of dopamine as the molecule of pleasure. That's not quite right. It's actually the molecule of motivation, the molecule of more, the molecule of desire and craving. And when you want something, when you're craving something, when you're highly motivated to pursue something, that's the action of dopamine. And dopamine is also the neuromodulator that awakens the brain to learning, to encoding new behaviors. So when an urge, a craving, a desire to binge or purge hits, that's dopamine surging through your system and creating that heightened excitement, that physiological response, that expectation of what's to come. And if you engage in that behavior, then your dopamine crashes dramatically. And what happens is you're left in a kind of pain state, a state of craving and wanting the same behavior again. And there's another neuromodulator that I'm sure you're aware of, and it comes with that rush of pleasure and calm and soothing from binging and purging. And that's courtesy of serotonin. Serotonin, that's the feel-good molecule. That's the pleasure molecule, the molecule of contentment, of calm. And you may have heard that a large percentage of serotonin is actually produced in the belly. So the very action of eating creates that feeling of pleasure. Is it any wonder that we're highly compelled to do it? It's a very simplistic description of that mechanism. But basically, all you need to know is that the workings of dopamine and serotonin create a cycle of craving and satisfaction, followed by more craving. And that's critical for our survival. It's what's kept us fed for all of history. And without it, we would die. The problem is for you right now at the moment that the highs are too high, the lows are too low, the cravings are intense. And that's all going to take some time to balance itself out again. And it'll correct. But in the interim, you're left with what I call the binge or purge urge suck fest, the suck. And that's the moment when your dopamine is surging, your body's screaming at you that it wants you to engage in the behavior. And worse, when that happens, your logical mind just abandons you. Where moments before you might have felt an intense desire and commitment to your recovery, suddenly you go to thoughts like, yeah, one last time, can't hurt, I'll start again tomorrow. You begin to justify why you need to engage in the behavior that your body is screaming at you to do. And I want you to be prepared for that and know that it's just an automated physiological response. It's not going to go away overnight, which sucks, but it will go away with time. And the good news is that the more of those intense urges to binge or purge that you are able to get through, the fewer urges will come as your brain starts to recognize, we're learning something new here. And those urges become less frequent and less intense. And that's the good news. And even better news is that with enough time, those urges will become extinct. If you've heard of Pavlov's dog, Ivan Pavlov, he speaks about urge extinction when the neural pathway is no longer active. So in recovery, you're going to have to go through this series of urges, getting through enough urges, as many as it takes, until that neural pathway is extinct. And your brain and body is going to take some time to get the message and do the neural rewiring. And it's my job to help give your brain and body that message as quickly as possible. So it will drop those old urges as fast as possible. But nonetheless, they will come. Now, incidentally, you can actually leverage your dopamine and your serotonin to your advantage in recovery. Now, we're not going to go super deep into that today, but know that reward and pleasure are a very important part of recovery. I know I speak about the suck, but in many ways, what you want to do, if you know the suck's coming, is you're going to align your recovery with as much reward and pleasure as possible. So in summary, it was wiring in, so to speak, hardwiring those behaviors of binging and purging by doing them repeatedly over a period of time, and that those behaviors came with a high degree of dopamine and serotonin reward. That's what made bulimia so embedded, so compulsive. And you can undo all of that by using the same mechanism of repeated behavior paired with dopamine and serotonin rewards to hardwire freedom, to make the thoughts and behaviors of freedom your new automatic hardwired program. So just remember again, let's go back to Samuel Johnson's quote: "The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they're too strong to be broken." So while that goes for bulimia, it goes for freedom too. So let's do a quick recap of those mindset shifts. Number one, it's not self-sabotage. Instead, bulimia is actually helping you meet important needs, and knowing what those needs are, being prepared to meet them in a better way, is a really good start. Number two, there's nothing wrong with you. All behaviors, whether they're positive or negative, are hardwired into your brain, whether we like it or not. And you're going to get to understand that system and leverage it and use it by using repetition paired with pleasure and reward and craving in order to hardwire and install new positive behaviors. And thirdly, I want you to know that the suck is coming. It's going to be a period of time as your brain rewires and as the dopaminergic system rebalances, where you're going to feel ugh, and you're going to want to blame yourself and you're going to think it's you. It isn't. This is just biology, it's physiology at work. It's going to take time to rebalance, and you're going to need to get through as many binge urges as it takes. But know this, it will change, it will get better, it will get easier. That's how we know you're on your way out to the other side, when things start getting easier. So that's the journey ahead of you. And then let's get into the action part. This is the practice, repetition, work part of recovery. Okay, let's start with the bit that everybody wants to know first, which is, how do I actually get through one of those binge or purge urges when they hit? The most effective thing to do when an urge hits is to have something very specific, to do the same thing every time, and to practice it until you can't get it wrong. So this is what I recommend. It's a little drill, which I now call the urge extinguisher, the universal urge extinguisher. And I'm going to play a little clip of a video now that I shot a few months ago, where I explain the drill and how I developed it. It's really simple. It's 3 words. So write these down if you have a pen and paper with you, and stick it up everywhere that you think you might be in trouble. Yeah? People might be wondering, what the hell has she got written down? It doesn't matter. They don't need to know. You can say it's for anxiety. So I want you to write these 3 words down. Stop, breathe, decide. Stop, breathe, decide. Stop, breathe, decide. And I want you to repeat those in your mind during the day, in the car. Have stickers there to remind you that when you get to that point where it's going to be hard to remember this, you've just got to remember 3 things. Stop, breathe, decide. Now, the stop bit is probably going to be the hardest bit. But if you are able to even breathe and you find yourself still in the behavior, it will help. And if you make a decision, then it will help you stop too. So this is really the essence of what you're doing. The stop piece is kind of obvious. Obviously, if everybody could stop, it would be easy. But the next bit is more important. I want you to think about binge urges from now on as being kind of mini fires. And if you let them go out of control, they're going to turn into binge urges. And when we talk about fire, fire is caused by 3 things. We talk about the fire triangle. It's caused by 3 things: fuel, oxygen, and heat. And a firefighter knows that if you take out one of those things, you can put a fire out. So if you can cool it down enough, if you can take out enough oxygen out of the atmosphere, or you can take away the fuel, then you are winning and your fire goes out. Binge urges are similar, but these are the 3 sides of the triangle. Where it was fuel, heat, and oxygen, we've now got fuel, which is the food. If food is your area where you have a runaway behavior, you could probably use this for smoking, drinking, whatever it might be. If you're in that place of using that fuel, if it's in your hands and you take it away, your binge is gone. There's no way you can binge if you don't have the fuel, right? So it's just like a fire. But this is the more important piece, because sometimes we put the fuel away and we get away from it for a while, but the next thing we're back there 5 minutes later. And these are the other 2 really important pieces of the, let's call it the binge urge triangle. Your focus, what is your mind thinking on, and your physiology. Now, anybody who is in that space will know that their mind is not their friend. It went from, I've totally got this, I'm going to rock this, to, yeah, let's totally do that. I'm such a failure. One more time can't hurt. You know, I've already, so I may as well just carry on. Your mind is not necessarily your friend in that moment. So I'm going to help you shift your focus, because it's really important to get your mind out of the circle and onto something very specific. And then the 3rd piece of the triangle, the physiology, is we all know that when we're starting to get that desire, that craving to binge or purge, this will work for purging too, your body starts to get involved. There's an intense physiological response. It feels emotional. And it kind of is, because what's happening is your dopamine is spiking in anticipation. It's driving you to do the behavior that it wants. It wants you to give in to the desire. Your dopamine's spiking at the moment, saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And that is a physiological response. Other things that happen, you might start salivating. Your tummy might start producing more juices in expectation of the food that's coming, or the binge that's coming. In fact, my mouth just started doing, just thinking about it, my mouth started salivating. And your heart rate increases. You're getting a bit nervous. You can feel you're in trouble, you're in danger, or your body's getting excited about the potential binge or purge. So what you need to do is calm all of that down. And the number one best way to do that is to breathe. You just take one deep breath. And it will give you just enough space to make a better decision. So this is the focus piece. What am I going to put my focus on at the moment? I'm focusing on, shall I binge? Shouldn't I binge? I'm focusing on the food. I'm focusing on all the things you don't want to be focusing on. This is where I want you to direct your focus. Make a decision. No, that's the decision. It's always going to be no if this is what you want long term. I don't do this anymore. What do I do? And then I want you to focus on what it is you do. I need you to do something. It might be, nope, I don't do that anymore. What I do is I go and sit down and I watch TV and I get super focused. And if your mind starts drifting away to binge urges again, the minute you catch it, stop, breathe, refocus, decide. I'm watching TV, and you get in there. Once we start focusing our mind on something else, our life that we want to live, you will get better and better at it. So this is not something that you're going to be like, wow, Helen, amazing. 3 words, my whole life changed in an instant. This is something you need to be dedicated about, and you need to remember it, and you need to practice it. And if that means you have to put stop, breathe, decide on your fridge, if it means you have to put stop, breathe, decide in your car so you can practice this idea while you're driving, if it means you need to put stop, breathe, decide in your trainers in the morning, so when you go for a nice gentle walk or a run, you're going to be thinking stop, breathe, decide, stop, breathe, decide, stop, breathe, decide. Because the more you practice those 3 words when you're not in the binge urge, the easier you're going to remember to do it when the moment happens. Just like firefighting. Firefighters have to remember that triangle, because when they get to the fire, they need to know what to do. They need to work out which of the 3 pieces of that triangle they're going to sort out first to kill the fire fastest. Now, in the moment of a binge urge, you may not be able to figure that out. So I'm telling you what to do. Stop, breathe, decide. That way you get all 3 of the pieces of the triangle. Okie dokie. That is the urge extinguishing drill. Stop, breathe, decide. Practice it, practice it, practice it. Let's turn our attention now to the 4 areas that you're going to need to work on. The 4 M's is what I call them, that are going to need an overhaul. And the 4 M's are your meals, your mind, your mirror, and your metabolism. We're going to start with your metabolism. It's the easiest to work on, and you can get the most bang for your buck straight away. Your metabolism is the sum of all the chemical processes that occur within your body that sustain life. So energy production, digestion, growth, reproduction, you name it. What we eat, when we eat, and how we eat has a dramatic effect on our metabolism. And anyone struggling with disordered eating will attest to the havoc it can play on your bodily functions. In particular, the drain it places on your energy levels, that's metabolism, and the havoc it plays on your hormones. And in a cruel twist of fate, the less energy you have, and the more your hormones are out of whack, the harder it is to do the work of recovery. And I used to think that I just had to kind of sit back and wait for your metabolism to heal as a kind of side benefit to your recovery. Because of course, if you're not binging and purging anymore, your metabolism naturally heals and improves. But recently it occurred to me that I was being actually an idiot. Why wait? Because there are a host of other things that you can do right now to help your metabolism heal while you recover. I became obsessed with researching every single lever that one could pull to improve metabolism other than the diet lever. So if we can't use food, we're not changing anything in your diet, you're going to work on that slowly. What are all the other things that you can do to help yourself have more energy and help your hormones and all of those things, good things heal? And here are the ones that I've discovered so far. Number 1, you need to get good quality fresh air daily. Simple. Number 2, drinking the best quality water. And this is really important, especially for people struggling with bulimia, I want you to begin to ensure that your water contains electrolytes. Those little electrically charged minerals are essential for energy production. And this is especially important if you've been purging, regardless of which way you do it, whether it's through vomiting or laxative abuse or over-exercising, it leads to dangerously depleted electrolyte levels. So just do yourself a favor and invest in some electrolyte sachets. Or if you don't, just sprinkle a bit of salt in your water every day. The third thing is getting sufficient amounts of sunlight. How easy is that, right? You want to get sunlight exposure at a certain time of day, particularly in the morning. And not only because it feels great, because it does, but it also boosts your serotonin production, and it helps on your melatonin production, which means that your sleep improves. So a simple thing like sunlight every day in the morning, ideally, is really, really good for you, and it actually helps your metabolism. Number 4, doing physical activity. But in your case, we want to do appropriate amounts, particularly if you've been over-exercising. And I'm going to encourage you to do the right type of activity, like low-intensity training or perhaps strength training, that actively helps your blood sugar levels stabilize, and it keeps you safely away from those massive sugar lows and hunger spikes that you get from high intensity. I'm not saying you shouldn't do any high intensity training. I'm just saying be aware that high intensity training, when you're in early recovery, can really play havoc with your blood sugar and your electrolytes, definitely. And most importantly, within an hour or so, you're going to be really hungry. Now, this is tricky when you're trying to recover, because you're trying to work with keeping yourself in a nice, neutral, comfortable space, so you're not triggering huge hunger spikes and potential binge urges. So if you want to take that on board, maybe tone down the high intensity interval training and just increase some more gentle training, low intensity physical activity. Number 5, and this is the most important of all of them, sleep. Getting enough good quality sleep is by far and away the most important lever that you can pull. Not only because it's where all of your metabolic repair takes place, but also, and perhaps more importantly, it's the time of day where your brain actually does the culling of those neural pathways and the building of the new ones. So all that rewiring I've been harping on about, it happens when you're resting and when you're sleeping. Your rest is as important as the effort you put in every day. And weirdly, you'll speed your recovery up dramatically, not by trying to do more work and put in more effort, but instead by prioritizing and protecting good quality, deep, restful sleep. Now, I've created a morning routine. It's about 10 to 40 minutes long, depending on how much time you have in the day. And I've refined that over the years, and I prescribe it to every single person that I work with, regardless of whether they have an eating disorder. And that morning routine really just covers, it's a sort of minimum effective dose, and it covers all the metabolic repair levers that I've just mentioned. It does it first thing in the day, and I've included a couple of quick extras that help you on the mind and the mirror aspects that we're about to chat about too. So you'll get an email tomorrow with a link to a video where I outline this powerful morning practice, and you can begin to use that to heal your hormones and boost your energy levels immediately. It really does put you in the best possible position to practice all of these new skills and drills and all the work that we're going to talk about today, so that you can clock up those wins and then fire and wire all these freedom pathways ASAP. So the video that you'll get in your email box tomorrow is my gift to you, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Okay, let's move on. I want you to think of the next 3 areas that we will be working on, your meals, your mind, and your mirror, as similar to the 3 disciplines of triathlon. You only need to learn how to swim, to cycle, and to run once. And once you've got them kind of locked in, you can pretty much do them for a lifetime. You can refine them, you can get better at them, but once they're locked in, they're hard to forget. When I was competing in triathlon, I knew that if I wanted to be a great triathlete, then I needed to train, and I needed to schedule in practice times and training times, and I need to schedule in improving the skills that I was struggling on. And what I chose to do was get a coach for the areas where I was weak. Let's start with the first one, your meals. When we talk about mastering your meals, we're really talking about essentially learning to eat again. And just like the discipline of swimming can be broken down into kind of mini skills and drills, like the pull, the catch, the kick, the breath, so too can the discipline of eating. So what are the skills that you need to learn in order to eat normally again? I remember so distinctly thinking, I just want to eat normally. I just want to be able to eat when I'm hungry. I want to be able to stop when I'm full, and I want to not think about it in between. And I remember it distinctly because it occurred to me that I wasn't actually practicing those things. If this was triathlon, was I scheduling them in? Was I practicing them? Was I even trying to eat when I was hungry? Was I even trying to stop when I was full? Was I even trying to not think about it in between? The answer, of course, was no. So they're your skills, the skill of eating when you're hungry, stopping when you're full, and not thinking about it in between. And those can be practiced. I'm going to show you how. So first up, like training for triathlon, you need to set up a practice schedule. So we'll call that a scheduled eating practice. I would recommend choosing 3 up to 7 times a day. I think I had 9 because I was eating so frequently and I felt so freaked out if I didn't think food was coming. But really what you want to do is align these where you would normally have a meal, maybe breakfast, lunch, dinner, a few snack times in between. So when you get to those times, you're going to practice sitting down with food, having focus and attention on what you're doing, and seeing if you can spot hunger and seeing if you can spot fullness. And you want to aim to keep perfectly satisfied, just nice and neutral, just maybe starting to get hungry at the next scheduled eating time. So when I work with my clients on this, we call this tummy check-ins, and they get really good at listening. Are they hungry? How much do they need? What is their body asking for? And then they do their best to honor that. Now you might be thinking, well, Helen, that's kind of useless because I can't tell if I'm hungry or full. Now what? Okay, fair enough. If you find that when you give this attention and you can't tell if you're hungry, you can't tell if you're full, you're not getting those clear signals, then that's okay. Just make your best guess. Give yourself mostly nutritious, delicious food in line with what you're craving and about the amount that you think would probably roughly right. Now keep in mind that restriction, and even just the thought of restriction, is usually the biggest driver of binge urges. So you really want to choose foods in line with your cravings, and you want to avoid at all costs calorie counting, macro counting, weighing, portion control, all of that stuff. If you've noticed that you're craving something very specific, say craving something sweet, but you're petrified of carbs, for example, and I'm going to ask you right now to be brave and start honoring what your body is asking for. Sure, by all means, make a healthful choice, but you must begin to lean into those cravings and honor that call for sweetness. In fact, I think that lesson that I learned was probably the biggest aha moment and ultimately really the turning point in my recovery. And that is if you deny yourself what your tummy just asked for, then you're practically guaranteeing a binge later. I remember so clearly a few months into me trying on this idea of scheduled eating. And one day I checked in and I got a clear call for a toasted cheese sandwich. At the time, I was really scared of that idea. Eating bread and cheese, fried, just all felt very, very scary. And it certainly wasn't what I had been allowing myself for a very long time. But instead of honoring that, I went back to my old restrictive ways. So I just decided, oh, well, I'll just have a salad instead. I'm sure that'll be fine. Sure enough, the salad didn't satisfy me at all. And the problem was then I was full. Technically, my tummy had food in it. I was full, but I was completely unsatisfied. And I was still wrestling with that intense desire to eat what I'd originally wanted, the toasted sandwich. And I'm sure you can guess the outcome. A few hours later, I was in full binge mode. And I didn't just have one toasted sandwich. I probably had about 5. So when that feeding frenzy was over, I knew with every cell in my body, if I had just honored what my tummy had asked for and just had the freaking toasted sandwich, then as scary as that might have been, I wouldn't have binged later. But eventually the message was clear. If I restrict now, I pay the price later. So honoring what your tummy is asking for isn't always easy, but you have to sit with a ton of mental and physical discomfort, especially if you think it's naughty or bad, or you start calorie counting and you're scared of all the weight you might gain. But I've learned my lesson and you'll learn yours. You rather want to honor than ignore. And this is what happens. If you honor that, even if it's scary, what you'll start to notice is that later you have more focus, maybe you're less hungry than you normally are at that time of day. And all the weight that I was petrified I would gain, I didn't. Because my body seemed to be able, kind of rolling my eyes, like obvious in retrospect, but my body is quite capable of managing energy expenditure with intake without me having to force it and track it and monitor it all the time. I just didn't know that then. It's taken time for me to learn that, but thank goodness. And I have no doubt you're going to learn that lesson too. So I get that it's not easy, but the more you practice these skills of trying to listen to your hunger, listen for that little whisper that you're full, stopping if you can, the sooner you're going to reach that place of ease, or what I call the Goldilocks zone. And over time, you'll learn that your body will bring you back there time and time again. No force necessary, no control, just the discipline of listening and honoring. Now, getting back to a scheduled eating chart, of course, in between those times of eating, you're going to be practicing the skill, and it is a skill, of not thinking about food in between. So if you find your mind wandering, you're starting to think about what you're having for dinner, or you're freaking out, or there's a binge urge coming, your job is to focus your attention back on whatever you're doing and carry on with your day. And that takes a lot of practice. It's kind of like meditation. Now, obviously, if you get a binge urge, you want to be getting the ritual done and dusted until the urge has gone away, and then get back to your day. So you're going to be practicing 3 skills. You're going to be practicing listening for your hunger and trying to honor it. You're going to be practicing listening for that fullness signal and trying to honor it. And you're going to practice not thinking about food in between. And that's how to learn to eat normally again. Now, this is a process. It's learning. It's going to take a lot of energy and focus. And you won't always get it right. And you're bound to make mistakes as you try this. But over time, you'll learn. And you'll begin to get really attuned with your hunger and fullness again. And you'll discover what is generally the right food for you to stay really comfortable in your Goldilocks zone. And most importantly, don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake. Look at it, learn from it, try again. Scheduled eating is not forever. It's temporary. It's a mechanism that you're going to learn to practice and get your body in tune with eating again. Over time, as you become more confident, you'll be able to just check in, respond to your hunger, and stop when you're full and just move on with your day. Okay, the next area you're going to look at is your mind. As you do the work of learning to eat again and getting through those binge urges, your mind can be your greatest ally or your biggest enemy. Every action, every emotion, every binge, every purge is preceded by thought. And the more that you get your thoughts on your side and make your mind your great ally, the faster your recovery, bottom line. And to achieve this, I'm going to suggest that you start a daily practice of headworm busting. So headworm busting, I just say that so casually. You're like, what the hell? A headworm is any negative, unsupportive, disempowering thought or belief that is taking up space in your mind and actively undermining your happiness and your ability to have what you want. They're basically your brain's fake news channel. Just because we think something doesn't make it true, logical, or a good idea. Sometimes headworms can be really sneaky, like a headworm that says, I shouldn't eat that cake. I know it doesn't sound like fake news, but in fact, it sounds a little bit like truth, but that's restriction headworm right there. And if you want to recover, and you just got the chocolate cake signal from your, kind of like my toasted cheese signal from your tummy, then what I'm telling you is you absolutely should eat the cake. You don't have to have the whole cake, there's 10 cakes. But if you've just got a whisper from your tum-tum to say, I really, really want some chocolate cake, and you've got that craving, and I'm going to ask you to be brave, trust your tummy, eat the cake as calmly as you can. So that's a classic headworm. I shouldn't eat that. And actually now I'm saying, possibly in recovery, you should, especially if that's what your tummy's just asked you for. Headworms can also be downright mean bullies. Like you'll gain a ton of weight, you're fat, you're ugly, you're a complete failure, you'll never have a boyfriend, so what's the point in trying? And those headworms, those bad boys, they're definitely going to need a serious takedown. And that's why I'm going to ask you to do a daily headworm busting practice. In the evening is good. You only need 5 minutes or so. Grab a journal and write down all these thoughts. Pull or extract all the headworms from your brain. Get them on paper. And by getting them out of your brain and on paper before bed, it's actually great because then you kind of go to bed with a clean mind. But extraction isn't enough. You'll need to actually replace them with something better. And that can be a bit tricky sometimes. Because sure, you could fake it till you make it, just replace it with kind of unicorns and rainbow statements and hope for the best. But what's better is if you can come up with something which has truth in it that you can really get behind, but it doesn't carry the sting and the pain that the headworm does. It's actually going to empower you to recover instead of the opposite. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of some headworm busting, particularly on the most common headworms that pop up in recovery. The king of all headworms in eating disorder recovery is the fear of weight gain. And it usually goes, that's usually catastrophic. Like, I'm going to gain so much weight. I'm becoming so huge. I'm so disgusting. And this headworm, it's predicting an unknowable future, one. It's catastrophizing. And worse, it's playing on all your deepest fears and sort of scaring you into inaction. Classic fake news. So let's have a look at it. Before we make an assessment on whether you will or won't gain weight in recovery, I want you to take a moment right now to just check in and see what your body feels like on you. Now, forget what the scale says, forget what your BMI is or any of those other external metrics. How does your body feel on you? So if you were walking on a beach right now, just you in the sun, nobody else around, the sea, the sand, the fresh air, it's glorious. Just you in your body walking down a beautiful beach. How does it feel to be in your body? No judgment. Remember, there's nobody there to see you. I want you to feel your body, not evaluate it. Does it feel fit, healthy, agile, strong? Can you move through the world easily? Is it easy to walk along that beach? Or does it feel maybe a bit light, a bit fragile, a bit weak, maybe vulnerable might be a good word? Or do you feel heavy, lethargic, overburdened, sluggish? It's difficult to move your body around. It's uncomfortable to move your body around. If you feel pretty decent in your body, then chances are your body's in its Goldilocks zone weight-wise. And that is exactly where you'll likely end up at the end of this recovery journey. If you're feeling light and fragile or vulnerable, then you probably know deep down that you are underweight, that you are not carrying enough on your frame for your body to be healthy. And if there's a part of you that knows that, then there's a part of you that knows that you're going to need to put on a bit of weight in your recovery. Not a ton of weight, it's not going to go out of control, but you maybe need more muscle or more fat tissue in order to be strong and at ease. For your body to be in its Goldilocks zone, then you're going to need to put on a bit of weight. And I think there's a part of you that knows that. And that might be one of the hardest things that's going to be standing in your way as you take on this work. But as I said, I wouldn't hold anything back. If you want recovery, then coming to accept that there's going to be a bit of weight gain for you in an underweight body is important. Now, if you felt that you were in the heavier body, sluggish, it's difficult. If you had to climb a flight of stairs and you find that really hard, it's hard to move around the world, then chances are that your body is not in its comfort zone, in its Goldilocks zone. And as you move through your recovery journey, when it's ready and when it's trusting you again and you're trusting it, then it will likely feel safe to release that extra weight that it's carrying. Your body doesn't want you to be too light or too heavy. It wants you to be strong and agile. It wants you to have healthy organs and tons of energy and a bit of spare energy, on board for a rainy day. That's what your body wants. It's designed to do that. And we know this instinctively to be true. But letting go of all of this fear and all the rules we have around our bodies these days can be very difficult. Allowing your body to guide you to that place when you're in the space of fear is very tricky. But if you're willing to be brave and start to really reconnect and listen to the whispers that your body's giving you and really start to get good, get skilled, masterful at listening to those and tuning into those, then your body's going to guide you to its Goldilocks zone. Now, I know that sounds a bit woo-woo, so be it. I'm sure I would have done a full eye roll and if I'd heard it 20 years ago. But regardless, it's true. And I think there's a part of you that knows that. I also want to tackle a very dangerous headworm, and I call him Mr. Back to Zero. And it goes something like, I binged last night and now I'm back to zero. Please, by all means, count all your wins, count everything, and count the full days. But just keep counting. If you have a bad day, but the next day you're back on the horse and you smashed it, then you're on day 10 or day 25 or whatever. You just keep going. Don't go back to zero. It's like learning a new language. You don't suddenly forget it all overnight just because you flunked a test. You keep going, you make mistakes, you keep going, you learn, you grow, you improve. And most importantly, you just keep hardwiring this in. That's what you need to do. So that back to zero idea is so dangerous because it's so demotivating. And people think, oh, they're starting again, they're starting from zero. You're not. You've just done a ton of work. You've made a ton of progress. But I've met some pretty phenomenal, driven, badass, disciplined, motivated people in my time. And at some point, everybody has bad days. People make mistakes. And your job is to get back up again fast and, most importantly, learn from what just happened. Another headwind that I hear that's a bit similar to this one, I should be better by now. According to who? That doesn't even make sense. As far as I can tell, anybody's been repeating the same behaviors hundreds, if not thousands of times, let alone a behavior this tricky to rewire, definitely should not be better by now. You know what I mean? And as for this idea, again, classic headroom of not being better, that's also fake news. A lot of people, when I hear that, they've actually made tons of progress. Maybe their breakfast is easier. Maybe they went out for a ton of meals and they've managed to get through them. Who knows? But they've made a ton of progress. So they're better. They are better. They're just not all the way better. They're not where they wanted to be. Their expectations haven't been met. So wherever you are, if that idea is coming up to you, I should be better, I should be able to do this, The fact is, it's just not true. And the fact is that you're not, and it's going to take more work. So let's replace these sort of back to zero and the I should be better ideas and replace it with something much more empowering. This is an example of a replacement headworm. So you'd say, hey, I'm frustrated. This is really still hard, but I'm proud of the progress that I've made so far. And I choose to keep learning and practicing every part of this until it's easy, however long it takes. Because remember that quote, chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they're too strong to be broken. So it may not feel like you're making progress. You can't feel it yet, but have patience. You are, and you'll see the results. Your hard work will be rewarded. You just can't feel it yet. Okay, that's headworms. The third area that we're going to look at is your mirror. So this area of mastery could technically just fit neatly under headworm busting, because it's actually the mind that's causing trouble more than the mirror image itself. But I've come to realize that it really requires a level of specialized focus in recovery. And that's because it was probably this desperate attempt to change what you saw in the mirror that got you stuck in this mess in the first place. Remember, your mirror image is a reasonable reflection, not a perfect reflection, but a reasonable reflection of how others see you in your body. And that is all. The problem is that it's become this huge trigger for all the things that you think other people think about your body, and all the judgments that you think they have, and all the shoulds you're putting on yourself about how you should be in society. And maybe you've even adopted some of those judgments as your own, and you actually believe them about yourself. But the fact is, you weren't born hating your body. You learned to hate it. You learned to nitpick it, to ridicule it, to shame it, to hide it. And you can unlearn all of that too. You can learn to appreciate it, to thank it, to be astonished by it, to celebrate it, to find it beautiful. Your relationship with the body that is reflected back in the mirror can be one of bitter self-loathing or one of deep love and respect. And ultimately, the choice is yours. You know, I'm not denying we live in a world obsessed with physical attractiveness. We do. And worse, we live in a world where your attractiveness, your sex appeal is openly equated with lovability, worth, and value. And it's true that beauty, however it's sort of currently defined, earns more, it's complimented more, it gets better jobs, it has doors open for it, just like being white does, just like being a man does. Fact. And those biases, they're definitely shifting and changing, thank goodness, but they're still in play. And that's the way we need to look at it for now. So now what? Well, you can either allow those judgments to hold you back and to keep you miserable and self-loathing and trying to force your body into a size and shape and look and all of this that it simply was not born with, constantly telling your body that it'll never be good enough for you, and constantly giving the mirror the power to make you feel like a piece of shit, excuse my language. Or you can free yourself. You can choose to get on with loving yourself, by all means, rocking what you got to the max, but to not allow other people's potential judgments and biases from holding you back from living your life a second longer. As I truly began to recover, I noticed that each time I caught my reflection, I'd hear this little headword, I'm so fat, I'm so ugly. And it never failed to make me feel awful. But then once I started noticing I was doing it, every time I caught my reflection, I started to practice turning that around. I practiced busting it every time I saw my reflection. And I'd insert something new and empowering, like I've got a good body. My ex-boyfriend thought I was beautiful, or I've got great eyes, or the guy at the pub said I was really sexy. At first it felt fake. It didn't feel real. I felt like I was lying to myself, but I knew that other people found me attractive, and that had to be enough. We got to cheer ourselves on. We got to be the people that love ourselves the most. And when we see our reflection, that's usually when all the self-help work that we do is challenged, because we think we're horribly flawed. And I guess in a way we are flawed, but that doesn't make us unlovable or not beautiful. And it's been incredible being a coach, actually, because I work with some incredible women, models and just unbelievably beautiful women. It's like so beautiful that I almost want to, hide in shame when they get on the Zoom call. But those women have their own self-doubt, and those women have haters. They have people who don't find them attractive. And this is, we've got to remember that even the most conventionally, drop-dead gorgeous heartthrobs are not attracted to everybody. And that's okay. That's how it should be. Everybody loves something different. And the good news is we live in such a big world that you can find your tribe. You can find the person for whom all of your biggest flaws are their fetish. The world is big enough for that now. Thank goodness. And you know what I've noticed? I've noticed that beauty has got way more to do with radiance and confidence. And those things can actually be learned. But that's for another class. So find your tribe, find your person, do the work, showing up, rocking what you got, appreciating your body. Let go right now of the wish that you were born with a different one. Liberate yourself, freedom fighter. Start living your life. In fact, what I'd like you to do right now, if you can, is just take a moment to put your hand on your heart and close your eyes if you can, and just feel your heartbeat there, just beating away. It's incredible, really, if you think about it. Your heart's just there every day, thumping away. And your body's just there every day, doing its best. And sometimes despite all the criticism, it just wants to make you happy. It just wants to do what it's doing. I know it's hard out there, and I know those judgments of others can be so harsh. But the fact is that you are deserving of love, and it starts right here, right now, with you. You have limited heartbeats left. How are you going to spend them? Are you going to spend them hating your wonderful body, just doing its best? Are you going to spend them criticizing it, shaming it, hiding it? Or are you going to spend them loving it, accepting it, appreciating it, celebrating it, adorning it? Our heartbeats are limited. One day they're going to stop. Plenty of women will go to their deathbeds still thinking that they're fat, ugly, and unlovable. I choose not to be one of them. I want you to make that choice too. It can be scary and challenging, and it takes work, and it takes work every day, but it's worth it. You just tackle one thing at a time. Start with one small action. Take on one thing that we did today and begin. So right at the beginning of this webinar, I promised that I was going to give you the strategy that I use with my clients, which I've done. And the last thing I said I would talk about is the two biggest reasons that people fail to really have long-lasting recovery. And the reasons are pretty simple. Reason number one, they just simply didn't have the right strategy. As Tony Robbins says, you're kind of flying east looking for a sunset. And if you're still listening to this webinar, then the good news is you have a strategy that works. We've spoken about something that you can use to intercept your binge urges. We've spoken about mindset shifts that you need to make. And we've spoken a lot about the kind of action that you need to take in the areas of your life that are going to need some work and some overhaul. So right now you have the strategy and you've got some skills and drills. The second reason that people don't recover is that they're not taking action. They get all the knowledge, but knowledge without action never gets you transformation, just gets you more knowledge. And if you're anything like me, I mean, how many books did I read and how many books have I read where I haven't actually put into practice any of the things that they've suggested, right? So we have all this great intention, we get all fired up, but you walk away, you forget all of it, and chances are tomorrow you're not doing anything differently. That's the key. You've got to be taking new action all the time, and you need to be looking at what's working and what's not working. You need to be learning, but most importantly, you need to be taking action. And it can't be the same thing you did, say, the day before if the day before didn't work. So if you'd like help actually implementing this structure, of actually implementing all the stuff that I spoke about today, and if you'd like my help, I'm not going to be shy about it. I'm going to actively encourage you, beg you, urge you, reach out and ask for help. And you can do that underneath this webinar. There'll be a link for you to book a quick call with either me or someone on my team to just chat about the ways in which I might help you. I've got a range of options so we can find something that works for you. But ultimately, what I know is when people try and do it on their own, it rarely works. Most people recover with help. Lord knows I had a ton of help along the way. And it can be hard asking for it, especially if you're someone like me who's like quite tough and doesn't like to admit when she's struggling. So if you watch that and you're thinking, God damn it, that feels like it could really work for me, then please book a call and at the very least just find out what I can do to help you. Because if you need help, I'm only interested in seeing if I can help. That's it. I'm not going to try and bamboozle you and rope you into something. There's no cheeky sales mechanism here. It's just going to be simple. We get to find out a bit about each other, see if we're a good fit, and see what I have to offer you. And that's it. But take that action. And everyone says, what should I do? Take that action. And then you'll take the next one. And then you'll take the next one. But working with a coach is just like having a personal trainer. It commits you to the work. It commits you to getting the results that you want. You stay accountable, you get great advice, you get all those things for sure. But more importantly, it gets you to take the action. And what I love about being a coach is also being there to help somebody see things that they can't always see for themselves. And because I do this for a living and because I've lived this myself, I'm floating my own boat here, but I'm good at spotting those tripping up points because I see it all the time. They're patterns that get people stuck, and we work through them and we learn and we grow. And over time, then suddenly things just start shifting and changing. And a day turns into a week, and a week turns into a month. And the binge urges dissipate. And sure, they might be there a few whispers, but suddenly you can get through them really easily. And then suddenly, years passed and you haven't even thought about it. Sure, you got all those better quality problems, but hey, I choose those better quality problems any day. It's worth it to do the work. So if you want to commit right now to taking the kind of action and implementing all the strategies and skills and drills that I've suggested in this webinar, then book that call and we'll get chatting, and there's no pressure. But at the very least, get a hold of me and we'll see what we can do. Yeah. It's been a real honor. It's been a real honor sharing. You can hear I get so passionate about it. It's been a real honor sharing everything I know with you today. And not everything. There's a lot more where that came from, but it's been a real honor sharing that, the kind of my life's work. And I hope you enjoyed it and you found it valuable. And more importantly, I really hope to see you soon. So big love to you, big binge busting loves to you. And I'll catch you on the flip side.